Hi there. I want to wish all my friends and family around the world a very happy Sabbath. I don't know about you, but for me, this week is just sped by, and here it is, time for the Sabbath already. And I'm very thankful for this very special, hallowed time that God has given us. You know, God is the creator of time, and that's why his timing is always perfect. As a matter of fact, there's a story in the book of Esther. Mordecai has unveiled a plot to kill the king, and he saved the king's life. But at the time, there was no special recognition given to him. It was almost like everybody had more or less forgotten that he had saved the king's life. And I imagine Mordecai might have been thinking to himself, I don't know, maybe he was just thinking, I did the right thing. It doesn't matter if I get honored or not, or if people notice or not. But anyway, time went by. But then God's timing was perfect, because as we read the story there in the book of Esther, Haman is very disgruntled because Mordecai is not bowing to him when Haman comes to the gate. And of course, Mordecai was taught that we only worship God. We don't worship people. And this was really irking Haman's nerves to the point to where he decides with his family, I'm going to put Mordecai on a gallows. We're going to hang him. You know, anybody who doesn't bow down to me and give me my respect is going to be done away with. Well, it just so happened that the same night that Haman decides to go to the king's palace and talk to him about his brilliant idea of hanging Mordecai, that the king can't sleep that night, couldn't sleep that night. And so the king gets up and he's reading the record books, and he runs across the story and was reminded that Mordecai had saved his life. And so he's asking, okay, what was done to honor this person who saved my life? And his aides and all were saying, well, nothing. Well, then Haman walks in at the same time, thinking he's got this brilliant plan to hang the person that the king is getting ready to honor. You see how God's timing is working out perfectly here? And so the king asked Haman, what should we do for the one the king delights to honor? And Haman is so full of himself, he's thinking, well, who would the king want to honor besides me? And so he says, well, dress him in the king's royal robes and have somebody take him on the king's horse and just cry out, this is he who the king delights to honor. And I would have loved to have seen the expression on Haman's face when the king says, great, go do that for Mordecai. And so here, instead of Haman getting able to do away with Mordecai, ends up having to honor Mordecai. And as I look at that story, I think if Mordecai had been honored earlier, like when maybe he thought, or we thought he should have been honored, that story never would have happened perfectly like it did. God reminded the king about Mordecai at exactly the right time, so that story would take place just the way it did. To me, it is one of the most humorous stories there in the Bible. It shows me that God has a sense of humor, but it shows me too that God honors his people at just the right time. His timing is perfect. If Mordecai had been honored earlier, again, that wouldn't have happened. That scene where Haman comes in all full of himself and then ends up having to honor the person that he was trying to destroy, that wouldn't have happened that way if Mordecai had been honored earlier when maybe he or we thought he should have been. So that again is another illustration of how sometimes things happen later than we think they're supposed to and take longer. But God vindicates his people, sometimes in a humorous way, but he always vindicates his people at just the right time. His timing is perfect. I have a friend that I can't share his name, but I can share his story. Gave me permission to share the story. He was working in a a certain place. Again, I can't give too much detail. But anyway, the gist of the story is that some people were basically out to get him, were prejudiced against him and biased against him, and so were working to get rid of him. When at just the same time their plot seemed to be coming together and he was about to be removed from that position, he actually got promoted to a higher position. And so he had the privilege of going to the group of people he was working with that were trying to get rid of him and telling them, I can no longer work with you, I've just been promoted. And so there again, God's timing worked out perfect. And so we can always trust God's perfect timing. Just like with the story of Mordecai, just like the story with my friend, God's timing is perfect. And friends, He will provide for you. He will vindicate you at just the right time. Let's celebrate this Sabbath. Let's celebrate this time together, remembering we have a creator of time and whose timing is always perfect. God bless you.